Strategies for part 3. Full sentences. Use full sentences. Don't just give one-word answers. Of course, you need to give very full answers. The reason I bring this up in part 3 is because you're going to be asked your opinion about society and about the future, about what's happening, about ideas. So you might not have fully developed ideas. So the tendency for some students is to, they're surprised by the questions, and so they just give very short answers. Make sure you give complete sentences with these part 3 questions. And I'll be demonstrating, of course, all of these strategies for you. Compare and contrast. That's quite useful. So that's when you take an object, take something, and compare it to some other object or other thing. You take a person, you compare it to a different person. And so compare and contrast is quite useful. One is smaller, the other is bigger. One is slower, the other is faster. This can help you talk about especially the complex part 3 questions. So, for instance, if you get a question like, what do you think about the use of cars in your society, like on the roads? And you might think, well, that's kind of a strange question. I drive cars, and then you think, I know, I can compare and contrast a car with different modes of transportation. So I could say, I love driving. I think people love driving cars because they're so convenient. You can just turn the key and go any place you want. However, if energy costs continue to rise, I can imagine people in the future will opt for public transportation, things like trains, and or they'll go carpooling, where they share a car, 2 different people share a car, things like that. So you're comparing maybe a car with a train, or you're comparing a car with sharing that car versus just having an individual car. You both share ownership and cost and usage of that car. So that kind of gave me an answer to a question about cars, because I thought, well, what can I compare driving a car with? Well, riding a train or riding other forms of public transport, right? The underground or a bus. So compare and contrast. The conditional if. So if the examiner asks you in part 3, what would you do if you won £1 million or $1 million? What would you do? If I won, I would. That's the construction. If I would. So if I won $1 million, I would give it to you. I'd send it to you in the mail. Now, if I won $1 million, I would buy a new house, and it would be red. It would be a red house, both inside and out. Everything would be red. The kitchen would be red. The doorknobs would be red. Everything would be red. The library would be red with all the books. I don't know why. Why would I spend $1 million on that? But if I had $1 million, I would do just whatever I want. So if and would, the conditional. Practice this because you will find it on part 3. So practice using the conditional if. Present perfect. This is not just for part 3. This is really part 1 as well. But in part 3, the examiner is really going to be listening for your grammatical range. Are you using different sentence structures? Present perfect is great. Okay, present perfect shows that you know how to use different forms. Present perfect can be simple or it can be continuous. I have been doing something. I have been going to the gym and working out. I have been working out. I've been drinking too much as of late. And so every morning, every night, I wake up drunk. Use that present perfect. Just get used to it. You're kind of running out of time because you don't know what to say. The examiner smacks you with a question that's really difficult and you don't know the answer. You don't know what you're going to say. So if you want to buy some time, you just paraphrase the question. So if he asks, what was the most difficult subject you studied in school? You just repeat the question in different words. Say, because you're really thinking, you don't know the answer, so you're giving yourself time by saying, a really difficult subject when I was in school was shop, right? Like building things and construction. That was really difficult for me because I'd never done anything like it before. So if I was having trouble coming up with that answer, that helped me. Perhaps that helped me to paraphrase the question and I could stall for time. Well, those are part 3 strategies. Now let's actually look at them in practice and see how I use these strategies with part 3 questions.